So that's really the end to Mistborn Era 2. Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. The reason I asked that question is because I really felt like The Lost Metal, the last book of Mistborn Era 2, really left a lot to be desired and a whole lot of story left on the table that we could definitely get into. Now, I know there's supposed to be a Mistborn Era 3 and then at some point a Mistborn Era 4, and we will obviously see the evolution of the society that we see here in Era 2, and as it expands, move forward, technological improvements, all of that. But I really feel like there was a lot left here that we could get a lot more from in Era 2. Now, it might take some new characters, but I just have this feeling that a lot is missing, and that when we get to Mistborn Era 3, we're just going to kind of learn a lot of history, or we're going to just be thrown into a world where a lot of things have changed between a lot of different things. And I really feel like it might just feel like we're not getting enough of the world fleshed out, at least to the level that I would like it to be. Now, unfortunately, I ended up giving this book a 3-star rating, which for me means I liked it. I thought it was a good book, but it didn't really hit anything above that. It's just kind of a standard good book. I am still glad I read it. I would still say that if you're a fan of Mistborn or of Sanderson in general, that yeah, you should get around to reading this at some point, but it is not something to break your TBR, get to right away, or anything like that. That is actually the lowest rating I have given to any of the Mistborn books. This would actually put it in the same realm as far as Sanderson goes as with stuff like Elantris and a lot of his shorter stories, because I normally don't give higher than a 3-star rating to a novella. So, I mean, I do sometimes, but in general, a 3-star rating is kind of where those kind of stories live. And unfortunately, The Lost Metal is going to be in that category as well. Like I said, it's still good. I still enjoyed my time with it, but it wasn't anything special. So as is always for my reviews with a sequel book, anything from the previous books is open to spoiler discussions, but I will not spoil The Lost Metal for you. So anything from Mistborn Era 1, I will also include Secret History, and the earlier Era 2 books are open for spoilers, so you all have been warned. So The Lost Metal opens up about 6 years after the Bands of Mourning, and we see that our characters have progressed, and everyone is in a slightly different yet similar position. We see some family growth. The interpersonal relationships between our characters have changed, or is currently changing as we open up into the story. And there is kind of a mysterious thing going on that we really actually don't get introduced to until a little bit later into the story. But basically, we are getting the crew back together to look for Wax's sister, and that's kind of where the story gets rolling. So now that you know what the basis premise of the book is, let me go ahead and start talking about some of the things I liked and didn't like, and I'll go ahead and start with what I like. So to start with, I've got to mention the characters. The characters definitely have grown on me as this series has gone on. When I was first introduced to them, I could have kind of left them or whatever, none of them were all that special, and none of them really hit the level of like a Sazed or a Vin from Era 1, but they got pretty close. I don't think that there's a big difference in quality and my enjoyment between Mistborn Era 1 and Era 2. I would put Era 1 above Era 2, but it's not a big gap. I think they are much more closer than people would like to admit. I think the Bands of Mourning is just as good as like the Well of Ascension or the Hero of Ages, any of those kinds of things. I think it's right up in there with it. So, take this with a grain of salt. But the characters overall really felt like they had kind of fulfilled their arc. They had kind of gotten to the point where they knew who they were. They were excelling at their goals. They knew what they wanted to do. And I enjoyed that. I also enjoyed the relationship that Wax and Steris have. I was a big hater of the weird love triangle thing that they had going on with him and Marcy and all of that. And just to see that they are actually happy, fulfilling each other, and just really enjoying each other's company and how well they worked together was great. Wayne is still Wayne. He's kind of like that friend still to me who everything they try to make a joke of, and it's such a shotgun approach where it's like they throw out 100 jokes and maybe 25 of them land. So it's like, yeah, they're still kind of funny, but like 75% of the time you're just kind of like rolling your eyes with them. And overall, I enjoyed where they were, what they were doing, how they had all kind of stepped into the role that they needed to at this point in their arc. One thing that I have always enjoyed about this series, and I think I will continue enjoying as we move into Mistborn Era 3, is the technological advancement. We're seeing already in this book that like cars are everywhere now. When we first started in the series, like that wasn't exactly how it was. We're seeing electricity kind of become the complete normal. Just all these little things that are really leading us towards the technological advancements that we're getting. You know, we see that they have huge ships that are like Navy level kind of things now. Obviously, with the people, I can't remember what they're called right now, the people from the South that we get introduced to in the last book, you know, we see all of the technology that, well, not all of them, but we see some of the technology they have with their flying crafts and just all of these kinds of things and the experimentation that happens. It's just nice to see this moving forward, and it also makes me see how, just from knowledge I have about where the Cosmere is supposed to go, or specifically Mistborn, it just makes sense. It all fits well into the story, and it's kind of interesting to see, you know, we go from such a closed story, primitive, from Mistborn Era 1 to get into this real, is this considered like gunpowder, steam age kind of stuff? I don't know. It's great, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it as well. And as somebody who is reading all of the Cosmere and really looking for those Cosmere connections, I really enjoyed that part of this book. This book is super, super Cosmere heavy. We have people going out and exploring the greater Cosmere. We get Shadesmar references. We get a lot of talk about shards and, you know, all kinds of things that if you are not really into this for the Cosmere, might rub you the wrong way. And I'm kind of a two minds of this book, where if you're not into that Cosmere stuff, if you're just reading, let's say you read Mistborn Era 1 and you're like, I want to keep going Mistborn Era 2, you're going to be a little confused, I think. I think you're going to be lost, and I think some of that stuff is just going to go over your head, and I don't mean that in a way of that you're not understanding it. I just mean, how could you? You know, you don't know all of these interconnected things that are happening on different planets with different people, with completely different characters and completely different series. And so for me, as somebody who has been reading this, following a list to help me get the best Cosmere order so that I understand everything that's going on, I really enjoy that. Now, you, as somebody maybe who hasn't done that, I could see this book definitely not, you know, landing as well, or if you just don't want that for the Cosmere in general. I've seen some people talk about how they like the lighter nods, the slighter touches, sleight of hand kind of stuff of, if you know, you know, and if you don't, it doesn't really affect the story in any meaningful way. And we are, I think, coming to a head where that is not going to be the case any longer. I have pretty strong feelings that you are not going to be able to go into Mistborn Era 3 and not have read things like the Stormlight Archive, like Warbreaker, like Elantris. I really think that these kinds of things are going to be so prevalent in future Cosmere stories that I'm concerned for people who don't want to read like 30 books to have all of this knowledge. And I guess you probably won't have to. You'll still probably be able to get the main plots of the story, but I think there are going to be some things that happen soon that you're going to really be missing out on a lot of story if you're not caught up on a lot of different things. And that's a big commitment from one author. I mean, like I said, I've been trying to do this in a year, and it's been a lot. It's like I did a video and I looked it up, and it's like 4 million words, which is like longer than the Wheel of Time, like longer than Malazan, longer than a lot of these big series that people love, but you know, it's a huge time commitment. So, and I just kind of have mixed feelings about that for other people. For myself, I love it. And so, you know, the Cosmere is great, and I'm reading it as a whole. And I think that's an important distinction to make here. And I really feel like going forward, it's going to matter with, are you a Cosmere reader or are you a specific series reader? I really think that is going to be important, not just for this series, but also for the Stormlight Archive as well. Let's get to the dislikes. And this might feel like I am more negative of this book than I really am. Like I said, 3-star, I liked it, it's good. But I just feel like some of the dislikes I have them very strongly, and I feel like I am better at articulating what I don't like about a story than what I am about talking about what I do like. So bear with me in that regard. So let's just go ahead, and I kind of already touched on this a little bit, but I felt like this story went in a direction that I wouldn't have chosen for this world. The way the story and the direction we go makes it feel like we are missing out on huge things in this world. When we were introduced to the other people in this world, I really thought that the last book was going to deal with them, that we were going to have either, maybe not even some kind of conflict, but some kind of us going there, us interacting with that group of people more, that being a much bigger part of this story. And that's not what we got. This was still very much a Ellendale centric with like a city somewhere else. It's the world's, even though we had been opened up and shown that there's so much more out there, it was still so narrowly focused. And unfortunately, it just, when this book ended, I was like, that's it. Like, there's so much, like what happened with so many things that I won't, you know, say because I don't want to spoil things, but it just, man, it just felt empty. It felt hollow. It felt like this book was done for Cosmere connections and to move that part of the story along, but that Era 2 in of itself wasn't really the focal point or the important part of this story. And you know, I still liked it. I liked all that Cosmere stuff. But this story itself, so much of it just felt like a vessel. It was just carrying us through so that we could get to something else. And, you know, I think, I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to title this video yet, but one of the things I'm thinking of is that this is just a Cosmere stepping stone. Because to me, the story in of itself is not that important, other than the fact of the one technological advancement we get from it and the Cosmere stuff. And that's, you know, it's not that this book was overly long or anything like that, but it just felt like that was the only reason for it existing and not necessarily wrapping up our characters themselves. So yeah, I feel like going into Mistborn Era 3, and this is me looking ahead a little bit, that we're either going to have to get like a lot of history that happens between Era 2 or 3, or maybe that gap just is going to be a lot smaller than I think, and those technological advancements are just going to help quickly, or are going to happen very quickly, or we're just going to kind of gloss over a lot of stuff. Not that I need to know every single detail that happens for us to get from point A to point B, but I just feel like so much is being left here that we could dissect and get into and explore this world that we know is bigger than what we're getting. And instead we kind of stuck with the same one or two cities that have been mentioned. And yeah, I don't know. It just didn't work out for me. And the story just didn't go the way I had wanted or expected. And I know expectations can be a bad thing, especially when it comes to a story that you're not writing, you know, but I don't know. It just missed the mark. One other thing that kind of leads into that is we get some mentions of Wax's family, like his kids. He has kids in the story. And, you know, I thought that was maybe going to play a bigger point into the story and fleshed it out. And I mean, really, they get mentioned like the initial time and then like once or twice after. And it's like, that's it. And the way he's just so willing to leave his family, I thought that would be maybe more of a struggle. You know, I know he has to deal with his sister, and that's like his other family, but he has his own family. I don't know. That's another part of like this story is just a vehicle for Cosmere and technological advancements and not really the characters. And it almost felt like our characters were so close to the end of their arc that there really wasn't much growth for them to get to, other than one character who is actually my last dislike. I had so many problems with Wayne throughout this book, and it's not for the things that people talk about. You know, normally when people are negative about Wayne, it's because of his humor, and it doesn't land, or they don't like it. It's silly. It doesn't feel like in place. It's kind of cringy, especially with some of the sexual stuff. But that's not what bothered me the most about him. Some of that stuff bothered me, but at this point, like I said earlier, it's that shotgun approach of comedy that I just, you know, some of it works, some of it doesn't. I just kind of what you have come to expect from that character. What really bothered me about Wayne in this story is this redemption arc he's going on. He murdered somebody. We've known that for a while now. And the redemption arc just does not land for me. I'm not saying, and maybe this is something Sanderson's trying to get into, the point of forgiveness and forgiving others and forgiving yourself. But unfortunately for me, he did murder somebody, and an innocent person. And sure, has he suffered? Yes. Has he trying to make up for it? Yes. But to me, you can't make up for murdering somebody's dad who, you know, had no reason to be dead by giving somebody money. Money is not something that just creates forgiveness. There is, you know, and maybe I'm going into this a little bit too much for these fictional characters, but the person whose dad he murdered has deep, you know, psychological pain, and then the fact that Wayne, and they kind of go into this, but you know, Wayne goes and tries to apologize and tries to, you know, do things to make it better, but you can't make that better. There are just some things you can't fix, and there are some things that people are never going to give you for, and that's okay. To me, you know, there are some things that are unforgivable, and what Wayne did is unforgivable. You know, really, he should have died. He shouldn't have been saved by Wax. He should have died. And he has come on a redemption arc to do good things and so many things. And I know how the story ends. And to me, it just felt so unsatisfying because it just felt like a cop-out. And I don't know, he's not forgiven to me. And so that is actually something that just bothered me so much throughout this story, was this weird forgiveness arc that Wayne is on that just never lands, just never worked for me. And it's unfortunate because he's a character that, for some reason, that never bothered me earlier on. Even when we first learned that information and everything, it didn't bother me. But really in this book, because it was so highlighted, I really guess I thought about it a little bit more and was like, yeah, she should hate you, and you should probably not like yourself for it too. And like I said, the forgiveness aspect of it, can you forgive yourself? Sure, I think that is different than expecting or wanting other people to forgive you. And forgiveness is a whole different thing that maybe Sanderson is trying to paint here with him as a character. But it just doesn't work. I think it's a huge problem with the story that the forgiveness of a murderer is at the forefront so much. And yeah, I don't know. It's a weird angle for me to take here. You know, these are fictional characters. None of this is real. I get that. But there's just kind of like a deeper moral questioning that happens here that I find interesting. And I don't know, for whatever reason, it really stuck with me throughout my reading of this book. But that is my review for The Lost Metal. Once again, a solid book. Not the wrap up to the series I would have wanted. But overall, I don't think Era 2 is that much of a step down from Era 1. I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I'm getting very, very close to starting Trust of the Emerald Sea and completing my Cosmere journey. But if you have any thoughts about The Lost Metal, did you like it? Did you not like it? Any problems you had with it? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, have a good one.